everyone. Welcome to the Fedgroup podcast. And today we have something exciting. We'll be cooking with two pots. And I think that sets the scene of exactly what we're going to be talking about today. This really fantastic topic, this new thing happening in our industry of the two-pot system coming in very, very soon. So I'm your host today. My name's Kapil Rathilal, and I've got the beautiful Jeanetta and extremely handsome Craig, who will be taking us through this exciting journey of two pots and cooking up a storm with two pots. So Jeanetta, welcome.
Yes, good morning viewers. My name is Jeanetta Hendricks. I am employed by Fedgroup and I also serve on all the Fedgroup Retirement Funds as trustee.
And then Craig.
Well, thanks, Kapil. Yes, I'm about to figure out how to cook, so let's trust that I can manage this as well as we do on the funds. I'm the principal officer on the Fedgroup Funds, independent principal officer, been in the industry for a long time. Absolutely enjoy the work and really looking forward to enjoying this opportunity.
And everyone knows, when Fedgroup does something, we've got to do it a little bit different. So we're going to add a little spice to the kitchen today. We're going to go over this two-pot system as a topic, and then we're going to cook up a storm. So Jeanetta, what are you cooking today?
So this morning I'm cooking a one-pot minced pasta meal.
Oh, that sounds very nice.
Yeah.
And yourself, Craig?
So I've got the larger pot and a nice challenge to cook up a lamb potjie for us. Also, nice and easy to do, which is good because the idea here is to try and simplify this whole two-pot retirement system that's coming in shortly.
So as Jeanetta and Craig are going to be cooking in these beautiful two pots here, we're going to have a nice discussion about what's happening in the two pots. We're going to ask a lot of questions. We've got two experts in the field that can really unpack what's actually going to go on in the industry. Okay, so let's fire up our stoves, everyone. I'm quite excited. I'm quite hungry. I didn't have breakfast this morning.
Well, let's hope we
I'm
don't
just gonna
disappoint.
come on. Don't mind me. You guys I'm just the judge. So Craig, what are you starting with?
So not quite as technical as a two-pot, but I need to get some oil from Jeanetta, and then I'm going to, I believe, saute these onions until they are brown and ready to go. So that's the plan for now.
For us non-bougie people, saute means fry?
Indeed it does.
Okay, thank you very much. And Jay?
So Kapil, I'm just getting my base ready. So it's my onions and my peppers, and that's to add the taste to my pot and make sure that is cooked through nicely and caramelized accordingly.
Perfect. So a lot of these changes coming in, especially with the two-pot system, it's going to play quite an interesting part, in what's happening in the industry. So I think maybe then if we can start going into a little bit of what we came to talk about today, and to our viewers out there, there's been so much talk. We've all heard about this two-pot system. This is probably not the first conversation or podcast you've heard about the two-pot system. But really what we want to try to do is how can we simplify this concept? Do we, as members, or myself also part of a pension scheme, do we fully understand what our benefits are? How do we participate in this two-pot? What are the benefits? What are the pros? What are the cons? So we're really going to go and unpack with these two experts today, what does this actually mean? And where this concept of two-pot comes in. So I think maybe if we can go straight into it, and to Jeanetta and Craig, what is the purpose of the two-pot and what does it really aim to address?
I think about it and I relate it to myself. So I'm 10 years away from retirement.
Yeah. You
And-
never say, Jay.
Oh, thank you. Too kind. But through my career, I've chopped and I've changed and I've moved from one employer to the next. And very much like our audience here, there were times when I would access my pension fund. I would take it and use it for my house or whatever I required. And so the two-pot system is an initiative to help alleviate the financial stress on members should they come into difficulty where they know that their retirement money is not kept exclusively just for retirement date. A small portion of their retirement funding is accessible for emergencies on the way there. That in a little way is just also to alleviate the stress, financial stress, so that people don't need to quit their jobs to access their pension fund.
Which we've seen in the industry, right? People have gone and said, I need this access to money, I will resign from my employer just to gain that, which is never the best thing, to be honest, when we're looking for a saving, that using that money for retirement. Craig, your opinion?
I think there's really 2 or 3 points that we're trying to address. The first one is, as you've already both said, that we want to avoid people stepping out of their employer to access their retirement fund. So this creates an opportunity for you to access 1/3 of those contributions going forward, on an annual basis, obviously in the tax year. And I think the main point is that we want to get to a place of retirement where you're not 100% or fully reliant on the government and your family and your children.
Yeah.
So the idea is to alleviate this longer term financial pressure for yourselves and indeed your families.
And encourage savings
Absolutely.
to a end goal.
Perfect.
Which is quite important.
No, absolutely. And then let's talk about this two pots. This is the slogan and this word that's been used, two pots. What does that mean? What is the one pot? What is the second pot?
So the two pot's actually quite simple. And as somebody who's been in the industry for a long time, it's been interesting to see how this has evolved and how these narratives have developed over time. But really, all it is that from the 1st of September, 2/3 of your contribution that you make from your employer is going to go into a retirement pot, and 1/3 is going to go into a savings pot. And really, that's the most of the change. That sums it up. It's an entirety.
For example, let's just simplify it for me. If I'm contributing 1,000 Rand to a pension, how much is going to the retirement pot? How much is going to the accessible pot? Yeah.
So let's say you've got a bit of risk cover. Some instances you will, some instances you won't. And let's say your risk cover's 100 Rand. So out of that 1,000 Rand, 100 Rand will go to your risk cover, and 300 Rand, being 1/3, would go into your savings pot, and 600 Rand, being the 2/3, would go into your retirement pot.
Okay, perfect. So be clear. So 2/3 is going to my retirement pot. That's looking after me all the way to my to my retirement date. And that 1/3, in the event that I need to access this money, that 1/3 becomes available to me.
Absolutely.
That's correct, Kapil.
Perfect. And then, so obviously, if we look at an employer-employee relationship, we have our pension fund, and we used to have provident funds, but we're looking at pension funds. But what happens if I have a retirement annuity? Does it have the same rules?
Yes, they all fall under the banner of retirement funding.
Yeah.
So retirement annuity, a preservation fund, a pension fund, and what used to be provident fund, all fall under the same rule.
That's actually nice. That sets the scene, makes it a little bit simple in the head how we understand these two different pots. But before I go into my next question, let me just see what's going on here. I can get some nice smells, but I'm not a veggie person. What time is the meat going?
The meat is it's getting ready to be put in. Yeah. Patience.
Patience, okay, I'm learning that.
Yeah.
And Craig?
So Kapil, actually, I'm ready to throw the lid on this and just let this go. You can see that lamb neck's looking quite nice.
And smells very nice.
Smells great. Yeah, I actually almost would want to take a nibble now, but we'll hang on to that for a while. That needs to just sit for about an hour and a half.
Okay, push it, please. I want some good food to taste. I'm very honest with my feedback as well.
It got spicy.
Excellent.
No, but not too spicy. You would look at me and you think I'd like spicy food, but unfortunately that's the wrong Indian. But I will try my best today. Anything spicy, I'll make sure I'll try to get it in.
Excellent.
So I think that goes into to the next question quite nicely. Let's make it a little bit practical. We're doing something quite practical. We're cooking a nice meal here. We've got a small pot, we've got a big pot, 1/3, and we call it 2/3. So, Jeanetta, let's assume you've got this 1/3 pot here. Now you have this, you've accessed your ability to take some money out of your 1/3, and then Craig, you're quite focused on that second pot, that longevity of that investment for the 2/3. What does that practically mean? Now, Jeanetta, if you take your money out, how does it affect your bigger pot or the 2/3, and vice versa? So maybe I'll start with you, Jeanetta.
Yeah. So Kapil, just like this one pot, perhaps I need to access my money because I can't wait that long for the more meatier pot. So this pot is available to me. But should I access it? Remember that I'm not at retirement yet. Okay? So should I access it? Anything that's paid across to me is actually paid across, forms part of my income.
Okay.
And that means it's going to be taxed
Okay, so that's
at my marginal tax rate.
So if we've got an individual with a high income tax bracket or whatever tax bracket that is,
Correct.
so we are taking a bit of a knock because obviously in the pension environment, in your retirement savings, that's growing free of tax, right?
Absolutely,
Okay.
Absolutely, and there's obviously more beneficial tax rates at retirement.
Yeah.
So I'm going to lose out on that beneficial tax rates by taking it a lot earlier, and I will be paying the tax on it.
I think just a quick one, Jeanetta. Remember, the other penalty there is that if you do have any outstanding IT88s or tax owing to SARS,
that's right.
That's also got to come off before you
true.
get paid.
That's very true. So whatever I take, please ensure that SARS is not owed any money. Because should I take my 10%, and let's call it 30,000, and SARS is owed 20,000, yeah, there's going to be an impact because we'll have to pay the 20,000 owed to SARS across to SARS.
So that's very important then, Jeanetta. So when accessing this pot, this 1/3, there's lots of things that we need to consider before we access that money.
Yes.
You know, yes, maybe we need 30,000 to do something that's, you know, unforeseen circumstances in our life, but there's tax that we still need to consider. There's other SARS issues that we need to consider. And then
Yes.
also we need to consider what that does to that 2/3 that's growing on the other side, Craig.
So I think the positive side is that the retirement pot is actually established for your contributions going forward. But in a way, and I hate to bring this in, Kapil, at the moment, but there is also a vested pot. Now that vested pot is all of the money that you've saved and contributed up to the end of August 2024, and that's going to sit there and that's going to remain there. And I think one of the common misconceptions that people have is that that money is now no longer accessible, but in fact that's completely vested. We're going to take, or let me say the regulations take about 10% up to a maximum of 30,000 Rand. They put that into Jeanetta's savings pot, and so you got this vested pot. But of course this is the other side of that coin, right? Because Jeanetta said you can access your 1/3 on an annual basis, but this retirement pot, you cannot touch that retirement pot until you retire. And I think this was the biggest point of contention, is people were so concerned that, you know, I wouldn't be able to access my retirement. It's in fact completely untrue, because you're going to have a vested pot, a savings pot, and a retirement pot. So yes, that retirement pot, you can't touch it. And by the way, even if you get retrenched or you lose your job, or you're dismissed or anything like that, you still can't access this retirement pot. You can only access that at retirement. Early retirement, of course, does apply, but it has to be retirement.
Absolutely. And I think you don't have to rely on your retirement funds as the sole savings vehicle. No one stops you from having a look at your financial planning in a more holistic way, where you make provision for emergencies differently. But should you not be able to, you can look to your retirement fund to help you in those instances.
Okay, fantastic. And then just a question, something that popped to my mind. So, and any of you can take it. What happens, so I'm part of an employee scheme, so for example, I'm part of Fedgroup. What happens if I resign and I leave? Does it affect my 1/3 or my 2/3? What happens in that environment if I resign?
You will still have access to that vested pot in the same rules that you have today. You will still be able to access your savings pot, depending, of course, whether you've taken a draw or not for that tax year. And you won't be able to access this retirement pot. And so that's what will happen from a resignation point of view if you do leave the employer. But I guess the key point that we're asking, and what's been coming up a lot in the industry, is, do I need to resign today to protect the money that's in my retirement fund? And in actual fact, if you're turning that completely on its head, that would be the entirely wrong thing to do. Absolutely.
Okay, can I take a little whiff?
Yeah, that's looking excellent.
Can't go wrong with a little bit of meat. And Jay, are you on track?
I'm on track, thank you.
So how many dishes can I get out of this? Can I have for lunch tomorrow? Can I have for dinner tonight?
It won't go very far. So,
I've got quite a big appetite. You wouldn't think when you look at me, Jay.
so it's to satisfy your tummy right now, but once it's done, it's done, and you're going to have to wait until Craig's pot is done if you're really that hungry.
Look, obviously there's pros and cons. How do these calculations be made? There's tax that we need to consider, and we've touched on it a little bit. So maybe let's start. I'll go to you, Craig. What are some of the pros to the two-pot system?
Yeah, so I think from a personal point of view, I'm hugely supportive of the two-pot system, and very supportive of the idea of having a compulsory, preserved retirement fund, or a capital that is preserved for retirement. You know, that is one of the biggest changes. Is historically we've never had compulsory preservation, and in fact this is compulsory preservation, and so you have to preserve 2/3 of that money. And you know, whilst I say I'm hugely supportive of it, of course it puts a lot of pressure onto people not to be able to access that money. And this is what I really like about the change, is that we do have this savings pot that you can access. So it recognizes, and I think in financial services industry, one of the things we often don't recognize is, you know, sometimes it can be the difference between putting food on the table, or paying your kids' school fees, or buying school uniforms, and saving. And how do you achieve that balance, especially in the current environment, for example, where you've got a higher interest rate and quite difficult periods. So yeah.
No, and then maybe, Jeanetta, I'll come to you with some of the cons of what you see in the two-pot system.
Well, as we said, you accessing a pot of money, paying tax on it, while you're working or while you're not at retirement age, whereas you could have had the benefit of a tax-free element. That is the con. There's another con that you probably going to fall short with your annuitization when you get to retirement, and you'll find your 2/3 may not be sufficient to pay you an income at retirement, whereas if you had 3/3, you probably would have been able to access a bigger monthly income for your lifestyle and your living needs.
There's also another player that plays the big part, which is the employer. Okay, and then there must be some sort of process. I can't just hit the button and as my money comes out. Maybe someone can take me back. Actually, Craig, what is that process?
Sure, Kapil, thanks. I'll split it into the two parts. I think the first one is that on the 1st of September, there's the seeding capital that takes place. So what's going to happen is, you remember
So if I'm just into seeding capital, maybe you can just simplify that for a little bit for me, Craig. You know, I did standard grade maths at school.
Okay, so seeding capital is effectively a little bit of money that's taken out of your current retirement fund and put into the savings pot for you to access.
Okay.
So it's kind of a little kickstart.
So it's my first iteration into the
kind of a way to
system.
kickstart the system for you.
Okay.
But what, of course, the expectation is that on the 1st of September, you'll be able to access this so-called seeding capital. And one of the misconceptions, everybody thinks they're going to access 1/3 of their retirement fund, but you're actually not. It's actually 10% up to a maximum of 30,000 Rand of whatever you have in your vested pot. So that's one of the most important parts in terms of managing expectations. And Jeanetta was talking about it earlier. You know, when you talk about the tax and the RT88s, there's this expectation that I'm going to have 30,000 Rand in my retirement fund and I'm going to be able to spend 30,000 Rand when it comes out, but that's not in fact the case. The other trick, and it's something like 1/4 to 1/5 of the members in retirement funds don't have sufficient balance to meet the minimum requirements.
Okay, that's
so that
interesting.
10% goes into your savings pot. It's got to be more than 2,000 Rand, otherwise you can't draw it out.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be an interesting development as we go in the industry. But in terms of the employer or being able to access the money through your employer, what's interesting is this relationship is entirely between you and your retirement fund. So your employer carries on as they always have. The contributions come off your pay slip or off your salary as they have. Your group risk costs get deducted and that money goes in. We split it in the retirement fund industry into this 2/3 and 1/3. So first of all, you're going to need to check how much is in your savings pot. How much can you access? Is it above the minimums, for example? You then need to go through a process of engaging with the retirement fund provider, in this case Fedgroup, and understanding how much tax will I pay, do I have any RT88s, and there's a process that Fedgroup needs to go through on your name to call and engage with SARS and get all of this information before you can actually make that withdrawal. And then you go through a process of the withdrawal itself. And by the way, Jeanetta will be issuing everybody a IRP5, I imagine, if you do make a withdrawal.
Absolutely.
Does a pension fund have a duty on 1 September to say, Kapil, this is what this is your 2/3, this is your 1/3. Is that going to happen, or is it the duty of me as an individual part of the pension scheme to go ask that question?
On the 1st of September, the whole system starts.
Okay.
The industry has taken a while to ready themselves, getting their systems, etc., ready. And your statement of account is probably not be available on the 1st of September. So the calculation will be done and it should be reflected and communicated, but certainly please don't expect it on the 1st of September because that's not going to happen.
I think, Kapil, just to add to that, I mean, you can imagine if we take the entire retirement fund industry, it's like 100,000, 200,000, maybe millions of people trying to draw out of their retirement funds. The kind of admin and processing capacity you need to be able to answer the questions, do the calculations, and actually physically make the payments, I think that's not to be underestimated.
Absolutely.
So your retirement fund will have a process that will be communicated to you, to the employer, in terms of what needs to be completed, etc., to access the money. So just remember to ask the questions. If you're unsure, you can ask your financial advisor, you can ask your employer, or you can ask the fund directly.
But then it also goes back to we have to plan properly, we have to be diligent in what we're doing. And again, how do we break these shackles of the history of our country? Yes. Fantastic. Okay, so how's the food going? Hey? I'm getting a bit.
So the good
Can
news,
you hear that noise? It's my stomach.
So the good news, Kapil, is mine doesn't need to be interfered with too much. Certainly a lot less than Jeanetta's, which I guess is what makes makes sense, this one being that retirement pot. We can leave that one.
And leave that brewing for a long time. Okay, Jeanetta, I believe you're almost ready for me now.
I am.
Oh, that looks yum.
Adding the final
What are we
touch.
adding in now?
Some cheese.
Is this any special cheese? Do I need to check with my doctor?
No,
Okay.
it's normal
Is
Gouda.
it Woolworths, Pick and Pay, Spar? Just checking.
Don't worry.
Okay, I'm good.
It's agnostic.
That looks very nice. That was,
Yes.
you whipped that up quite quickly, Jeanetta, eh?
Yes, and that was the aim, so that
Yeah.
you can have something to eat. 'Cause
Okay.
apparently you're very hungry.
Yeah, are you gonna, can you put all of it in my plate, please?
I could, but I wouldn't advise that. I would say you've got a big pot coming there.
Okay.
So perhaps just take what you need
That makes.
to satisfy yourself and not.
Shouldn't get ahead of myself, get too excited because I'm in
Don't
this big
get
pot.
because you're going to spoil your appetite.
Okay, I think
for the
I like
future
that.
one.
That's good advice. Thank you, Jeanetta.
You're very welcome.
Okay, must I dish as the judge, or are you gonna dish it out?
I'll dish.
I'm gonna come around here.
Yes. I'll give you a bite.
Okay. Okay, I think I just need a fork, Jeanetta. Thank you.
Craig, would you like?
Craig, would you like to
bite?
taste some with me? Your
Absolutely. Let
competitors.
me have a little bit of that. Yes.
Yeah. We want honest criticism, Craig, although it's your counterpart that you're competing against, yeah?
Well, you know, the idea is the two of us work together.
That's, I like
the
that.
two
I like
pots
that.
together.
I like that. Okay, there
Yeah,
we go.
the one
Cheers.
enhances the
Cheers.
other.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Enjoy. Hot. And don't have too much. It's quite
Oh, that's
spicy.
spi-
so
that's
it
lovely.
It can
Okay,
burn.
okay. Towel, please. Towel, please.
It can burn if you
Yeah.
have too much of it.
Jeanetta, that
Okay.
is
Lovely.
really
Lovely.
nice.
Well, thank you.
I can absolutely understand why the savings pot is so appetizing, eh? And so
It's attractive.
encouraging, sure.
It's attractive, but it can burn. And the sting will come afterwards,
That's true.
as we've explained.
4 hours later.
Ooh, now we're finally going to see what you've cooked up, Craig.
Yeah, can't
Let's
wait.
see what's in there.
Absolutely. Let's have a look.
That looks good, eh?
Gorgeous.
That's what happens when you cook something for a little bit longer.
Absolutely.
No,
I think
no
that's gonna
offense,
work.
Janita, but that looks pretty nice.
Looks very
Right.
good.
Okay, you're going to do the honors for us, Craig?
All right, is that enough for you for
No,
now?
I think that's
Easy.
fine for now, yeah?
Bit of sauce.
I've got a long time to
Maybe you'll
eat
have to
this.
annuitize the rest.
Yeah,
eh?
I think that's a great idea. Should I bring the lunch boxes?
Absolutely.
Good things come to those who wait.
True, huh? Got to have a little bit of patience and let it. Don't be like me and just try to eat it as soon as you put the meat on.
Well, Jeanetta did manage to keep you in check to some extent there. You didn't get to take the whole thing, remember?
Exactly. I wish. Okay, so should we dig in, Craig? Do you have your fork?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's dig in. Let's taste this.
Let's try this.
Yum. That is soft.
Now
Lovely.
the sauce is very
Well
nice. eh?
done. Compliments to the chef. Very nice. Crunchy vegetables. Delicious.
The value of cooking
Just
for
the
some time.
right amount of spice.
So what are the key concepts that we need to really consider? We've spoken quite a bit of stuff today, and Craig, maybe I'll start with you.
Sure, Kapil, thanks. So I think the key concepts are, which we've spoken about today, is that there's a lot of noise about the two-pot system, but in actual fact, it's reasonably simple, and there's nothing to worry about. Your money is always your money. It's going to carry on being your money. It's just changing the way you access it over the next short while. And that's contributions going from the 1st of September, you know. Don't worry about the historical stuff. That's completely protected under those old rights. And that's important, Kapil. I think a lot of confusion and concern came about what does this change mean for me? And the reality is, I'm hoping you've seen today that the change means you've got something for retirement and something in the case of an emergency.
And from you,
And
Janita?
accessibility, but guidance notes to not just, because it's accessible, to not just go out and believe that you have to take it. Plan, consider what your ultimate goals are in retirement and work towards those. They don't need to be abandoned now with the changing regime. Continue with that.
Perfect. And I think it also brings a different level of discipline. Yes, there's this ability to help me if I need to, which I think is fantastic. You know, most bigger pots of money of people's are their pension money. So yes, we have that ability, but don't forget the goal of what we're trying to achieve here. And there's something that we always speak about. You know, when you come to age retirement, And I think that's what's important, this advice and understanding what happens to your money, understanding the system, understand what happens when you take money. Because also when you get to retirement, and Craig, we can have a quick discussion. Far often not, we get to retirement, we assume our R1 million, our R2 million is a big part of money. But we have all these different options. We can take all our money out, we can buy a life annuity, we can buy a living annuity. There's lots of things that we also need to be educated as members of pension schemes when we come to retirement. And I don't know if you're going to add a little bit to that, Craig, of what you've seen in the industry over the years.
So my experience in the industry is that, and you alluded to it earlier on today, was that people think that financial advisors and these financial decisions are limited to people with a lot of money. But often what we see is people that have worked their entire lives, and maybe they don't have an enormous amount of capital, but they do have a substantial amount relative to their monthly salary. And even then, it's important to seek advice and understand what options you have. And that, I think, is often the mistake that people make. And, especially when you start looking at two-pot, you must embrace the change. And in order to fully embrace it and understand how it works, it's all about getting that information, understanding it. So my encouragement to people, having been in the industry for a long time, no matter how little you have rights, you have choice, and you need to make decisions. And those decisions ultimately impact you for a long time. So don't worry about that ultimate balance. If you manage it every day from today, it'll be there for you, and you can get somebody to help you make the right decisions at retirement. And that's what two-pot's all about.
Absolutely. And before we conclude, I must just say, Jeanetta, you made a fantastic meal, and you whipped it up quite quickly. But the longevity of that potjie, Craig, well done. I'm going to call you the winner for today. You've made a fantastic meal, Jeanetta.
Thank you.
It's not all about winning. You made a great meal.
I contributed.
You contributed, and I think that's quite important. You played a pivotal part in feeding me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're
So
very welcome.
That's come to the end of our podcast. I hope everyone really learned something about the two-pot system. We shouldn't be scared of it. We should be very aware of it, and we should also use our element of control to control that this new power that we have in our retirement savings. And I'd like to thank my two guests, Jeanetta. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for making time and being here today. Craig, pleasure having you here.
Thanks, Kapil.
Appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, Kapil. Really great to be here. And I guess we can put a lid
We
on
put
this
a lid on
two-pot.
two-pot. There we go.
Yes, well done.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Guys, thank you for joining us. Have a lovely day further. Goodbye.